With the conclusion of the most recent version 2.3 anniversary livestream, Kura Games confirmed an exciting limited time 5-star character and weapon selector banner, making this the perfect time for new players to jump in. Instead of waiting months for your desired 5-star to rerun, you'll have a rare chance to build a strong team right away. But with so many options, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Don't worry, this guide will break down exactly which character or weapon deserves your hard-earned resources. The first rule of thumb before building any of your teams is to prioritize the characters you love and then build around them. To help you decide this, I'll rank the anniversary picks in a tier list based on your account's needs, covering general recommendations for new players or those starting a fresh team, top picks for Whimpering Wastes, and strong character synergies who works best together. Okay, so what I've done for this guide is basically I've just gone on Pridewind and taken all of the information and just compiled it into a video for players' reference. So let's go right into it. As you can see on that banner, every character that's getting a reroll all excel at something. You won't go wrong with whatever character you pick. They're all going to be good for something. We've got Carlotta, we've got Jinxi, Phoebe, Jeju, Xiangliao, Jian, Brant, Changli, Rosia, and Yinlin. I'll start with some general mech recommendations. So in Withering Waves, we have two types of game mode. We have Tower Adversity and Whimpering Waste. Tower Adversity is more single target focused. Whimpering Waste is a bit more AoE oriented. So because of that, with these two endgame game modes, they're going to have different characters that specialize in each one. But if you would prefer to get like a well-rounded character, I would recommend you go for either Carlotta or Xiangliao. Just because both Carlotta and Xiangliao are like quite good in both of these end mode game modes. In terms of a support character, if you're looking for like a more like sub DPS, I highly recommend Brant. Just because Brant, he does everything. His main role is sub DPS fusion buffer, but he can also excel as a hyper carry main DPS. He also excels at sustain such as healing and shielding. So the only con to getting Brant at this stage is he is quite difficult to build. You'll have to be, if you for example want him to be a main DPS or a sub DPS that actually does good damage, you need to get crit rate, crit damage, and you need to build energy. He requires a minimum of 260%, ideally 280% energy regen. That's why a lot of people say he can brick your account in that aspect where you have to grind heavily for him. But the good news is in version 2.3 we are getting a main stat reroller, so I think that will help significantly for a lot of new players coming into the game. You'll be able to use that main stat reroll to roll his stats. The other character I want to touch on is Changli. So Changli is interesting in the way that she's got this expert +2 label, which means that if you play her at that expert level, she can be a T0 character. But the only requirement is you do need to invest time into learning how to play her, learning how to play that quick stop playstyle to get her to that point. But again, if you like her aesthetics, you just like her as a character, you can perfectly play her as a hyper carry main DPS and she'll still be a meta T1 character. If you are looking for that quick swap playstyle, I highly recommend pairing Changli with Brant and Xiangliao as one of the character synergies, which is something I want to get into next. So basically I've got here listed as characters and their synergies. Pretty straightforward. For example, you want to build a premium team for Jinxi, then just check like, oh, which character. She's got these supports as her best in slots. Jinxi, she would also go great with Cantarella, but just because Cantarella, she's not getting a rerun on the obviously the version 2.3 banner, she's already recently got one. Then the alternative is Jeju. So if you have Jinxi and you want a best in slot for her, best in slot sub DPS, I highly recommend Jeju. She's pretty much as good, if not better than Cantarella for Jinxi. Likewise, if you for example have a Yinlin and you want a DPS that would get the most use out of her, highly recommend Xiangliao. Jinxi can work with her, it's just Jeju is just better in terms of synergy. I've also added Zani and Chakona onto this table, but take them with a grain of salt. This was just based on information that was available to us from the version 2.3 live stream. It is subject to change, so I advise viewers to just stay up to date with like future Withering Waves contents. Like metas can change over time. Okay, so now that we've got the characters out of the way, I want to talk about the weapons. So if you've already got like a roster of characters on your account and you want to focus more on refining characters, or you want to get some 5-star limited weapons that would heavily boost your account, these are the weapons I would recommend, and I'll get into them shortly. But basically this tier list is based on how impactful these weapons are to your overall account or character, and weapons that have a more generalized kit would have a higher value on this tier list. This is very subjective. If you're stuck on what you should prioritize, this is the guidance I would recommend. So let's start with String Master. String Master and Blazing Brilliance are like similar in the way that they're both very great general weapons who would be great on like either your sub DPS or even your main DPS if you decide so. For example, with String Master, she's obviously Yinlin's best in slot weapon. But not only that, but when we look at String Master on like the other 2 Rectifier premium units that's coming on 2.3 banner, on Jeju, String Master is also the second best in slot and not by far from Jeju's signature weapon. Likewise on Phoebe, she's also Phoebe's second best in slot. That's why I say String Master, highly recommended weapon. Next up is Blazing Brilliance. Pretty much for the same reason Rectifier is in S tier. Blazing Brilliance is also has a very generalized kit and can overall benefit your account. So obviously she's Chun-Li's best in slot, but not only that, she's also Sanghua's best in slot. If you've got like Sanghua sub DPS for Camellia who just re-ran recently, Blazing Brilliance is great for Sanghua to use as a Camellia support. Not only that, but it's also the best in slot for Rover, and it's also like the second best in slot for Havoc Rover with not much difference in terms of damage, but with Red Spring. So that's why I say Blazing Brilliance. If you've got any of these characters on your account and you want to build them as main, and you build them as main DPS or a sub DPS, highly recommended. Blazing Brilliance will add a lot of value to your account. The next thing we've got here is Carlotta and Shanling Yao's signature weapons. These are just, I've put them that high just because they're both very great DPS units. So if you've got either a Carlotta or you've got a Shanling Yao, highly recommend their weapons. Both those characters, if we go back to the tier list, excel at Tower Adversity and Whimpering Wastes. So that's why I say if you're looking for a more like well-rounded team that can clear a lot of content in this game comfortably, I would recommend getting these 2 weapons for those 2 characters because it would add value to your account in its own way. Age of Harvest next is the interesting one I've put in A. Age of Harvest, I put it in A just because Jinxie is actually quite busted in terms of Tower Adversity standards. She does drop off in Whimpering Wastes, but nonetheless, it doesn't really devalue her weapon's value because she's still a Apex character, like one of the biggest DPS dealers in the game. She'll be able to easily clear Tower Adversity content for you with her weapon. The reason I ranked it higher than Jian's weapon is because when you compare the 2 weapons, so on Age of Harvest on Jinxie, obviously best in slot, but then where I want to draw attention to like Verdant Summit, you can also use Verdant Summit on Jinxie, but if we like compare the 2 characters, for example, if we look at Jian, Age of Harvest performs better on Jian than Verdant Summit would perform on Jinxie. So that's why I've put Age of Harvest a bit higher on this tier list than Jian's Verdant Summit. Just because in the off chance you have both Jian and Jinxie, you're better off just getting the Age of Harvest to save your resources a little bit, because at least with Age of Harvest, it's a little bit better on Jian than if you get like Verdant Summit on Jinxie. Moving on to Brandt's weapon. So Brandt, as I said earlier, he's a very he requires high investment if you decide to build him. That's why I highly recommend, if you do get Brandt, is to try at least to go for his weapon. It's quite important. It's almost like Shorekeeper's weapon, but for a sword wielder. And for Brandt, since he scales off of energy regen, it would be significantly helpful to get this weapon on him, especially if Brandt would provide a lot of value to your account in terms, just because he has such a versatile kit. Next up, Phoebe's weapon. She's a bit of an interesting one where she's a great sub DPS, but she's also a great main DPS hypercarry. The only reason I didn't put her weapon in A tier is just because String Master exists. So if you have String Master and you play this Phoebe as a sub DPS and you don't really need her weapon, the only time I would recommend her weapon is if you want her to be maybe like a main DPS hypercarry. But aside from that, Phoebe on her own, she's got great stasis application. She was really great in the most recent co-op Gaze into the Abyss event. She helped a lot in terms of applying stasis on the boss and then just keeping the boss still while your team dishes out damage on the enemy. Jojo, again, same reason, just String Master exists. It's like, you'd get more, if you have String Master, you kind of don't really need her weapon. But again, if you want to play them as like a high DPS, main DPS characters, then by all means, I would recommend you still roll for Jojo and Rosia's weapon. Yeah, if you like your if you like these characters, you're more than welcome to roll for their weapons. It's just, I'm just giving recommendations, assuming if you're free to, for example, you've got limited resources, or if you're free to play, this is how I would recommend you prioritize your resources. But yeah, that's pretty much it from me for this guide. Hopefully it's provided some sort of clarification or idea on what character you want to roll for the upcoming rerun banner. Yeah, if you like this type of content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Who knows, maybe I'll make more. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. We'll see. But yeah, that's it from me. See you guys next time. Bye.